It is never too late to start living your life by design. You are going to enjoy this conversation with Ashley Cloud. She is diving into some case studies straight from hot topics in the news, and she's going over some of the particulars that are 100% necessary if you are building a brand that you want to stand the test of time. She's showing you how to lay that legal foundation and has a word of caution for those who haven't yet gotten their ducks in a row but are seeing some traction in the market. Good intentions are not going to be nearly enough to make sure that your business is protected. Get ready to take some copious notes. So Ashley, welcome to the Life by Design show. I'm excited to have you join us today to share all of your insights and your expertise with up and coming designers, with emerging designers who are just starting to get their footing in this industry and want to dive into the foundational things that are necessary so that they do it right the first time and so that they can have a brand that is long lasting and not run into any legal issues that are going to just halt all the progress that they've made. So I would love for you to just dive in, tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into the nitty gritty of the conversation. Let's let them get to know you better. So tell us what makes you tick.
What makes me tick? So many things. First, Charmaine, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be able to just share a little bit about myself and my story, my mission, my vision, my purpose. All these things are so intertwined, and so much of what I do and so much of what makes me tick is helping others, empowering others, inspiring others in different ways, not just being a lawyer, but just really the way that I live my life. And so I'm just super excited to be here with you. So, just a little bit about myself. My name's Ashley Cloud. I am originally from Houston, Texas. I grew up around a lot of entrepreneurs. I grew up in my mother's hair salon. She had her own hair salon for about 25 years. My grandfather had his own trucking company in Louisiana, New Orleans for many decades. I have so many family members that have had their own businesses. And so I've just always really wanted to be able to empower entrepreneurs. I just didn't know how I was going to do it. At first, I just thought that I was going to have my own law firm. I didn't even know what kind I wanted to have, but I just always knew that that was something that I wanted to do, was be a lawyer since I was a teenager. And so I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew that I had to go to college. And so I went to the University of Houston, where I studied sociology and philosophy. And then I took some time off from my studies. I lost my father during that time, like right after I graduated from college.
So
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you. And so I needed to take a step back. I knew that I wanted to go to law school, but it just wasn't the right time right out of school. So I took my time, I healed, I partied, and I just kind of let loose and be in my 20s for a little while. And I kind of lost my way a little bit, but then I started hearing that, didn't you say you were going to law school? Like I told my friends, I told my family from a young age that I was going to go and I hadn't done it. And so they just started reminding me. And then I just started hearing the Holy Spirit tell me, didn't you say you're going to go to law school? Isn't this something that we talked about? What are you doing? And so I one day I just woke up and was just like, okay, let me get back on it. And I started my journey to become an attorney. And it was a long journey. It was longer than I thought. It was harder than I thought, but I'm sure as a fellow entrepreneur, anytime you're trying to follow a dream, when you first start, you don't know what it's really going to be like. And that's kind of by design, because sometimes if you know what's really going to happen, you might be like, you know what?
I'm not going to do that. All right.
And that's all right, because one thing that I'll say is I've learned so much, I've grown so much, I've been humbled, but I wouldn't change anything about my journey. So
I'm excited to dive into this episode, but before we go all the way in, I want to be sure you've heard about the label launch blueprint. Staying stuck in DIY mode has caused too many talented designers to burn out. So, after decades of experience in the fashion industry, I've taken all of my brand, design, sample development, marketing, and production expertise and put together an easy to follow step by step roadmap so you can take the guesswork out of your launch strategy. No more going around in circles, wondering what to do when and how to do it, and not having support along the way. I want you to give yourself the gift of clarity. Head over to cmdesignagency.com/label launch blueprint for more info, and I cannot wait to connect with you. Now let's get back to it.
Once I got back on track and I started making my way into becoming an attorney, I got into a lot of law schools, but Howard was, they were giving me the biggest scholarship money and they were the farthest away from home. And those were my priorities at the time. I wanted to get away from my comfort zone and everything that I knew, not realizing all the other amazing benefits of going to Howard and going to an HBCU that has such a history. And one thing that they taught us when we got there was to be a social engineer. And I learned more and more that that's something that is so important to me as someone that, I'm a black woman in society. I have this fire in me to help others, to empower others, to try to find a way to level the playing field. And that requires me to be a social engineer, to look at what's going on and see, like, what can I do to make things better, not just for me but for the people around me. And so that's really what I've been doing since I can remember. So when I got to Howard, I didn't know what kind of lawyer I wanted to be, but I shortly after I got there, I learned about the Yves Saint Laurent and Christian Louboutin case about the red bottom shoe. And I was like, what is this? This is so interesting. I didn't even think, I just didn't, I never thought about the law when it came to like the fashion industry. But the more that I dove into it, the more that I learned, I'm like, this makes so much sense. Like, fashion is a business at the end of the day, $1 trillion business.
Yes.
And it has to be protected and everything has to be done in a way to where you can actually succeed as a designer or in whatever role that you're playing in the industry. And so the more that I explored that, the more that I saw a need for my expertise as an attorney, or as a budding attorney at the time, but also because I'm so passionate about fashion on its own, that I was like, this is just the perfect marriage between these two worlds that are so important to me. And so that's where my fashion law journey started. While I was in Howard, I was the co-founder of the Fashion Law Society at Howard. I also was the co-chair of the Fashion Law Week, which was basically kind of a play off of Fashion Week, where we had a symposium for a week full of different topics on fashion and the law, stuff with dealing with tech, trademarks, contract, just all the different aspects of fashion and the law. And then I also decided to get my MBA in supply chain management because
Mhm.
I wanted to make sure that I was providing a holistic perspective when I'm working with my clients. I wanted to be able to not just talk about like this is legal, this is not legal, but also think about the strategic aspect of things with my clients. And so after I graduated from law school, I was chosen for a fellowship with the Attorney General's office in DC. And then after that, I worked for the Small Business Administration from 2018 to 2021, where I was working on a lot of government contract stuff. But then I was there when COVID hit. And so, because of all the disruptions that were caused by COVID for small businesses, for everyone, but for small businesses especially, we did a lot of work on providing small business relief. And so that was the legacy that I left before I decided to finally take the leap, quit my job, and move to New York City and start my own law firm, the Cloud Law Firm, which I started in February of 2022.
Ooh, nice. Oh gosh. So you've had quite a journey already. Good gracious. But I have another question. You mentioned that your family knew that you wanted to get into law. You know, you heard from God, you knew this was for you. But what was it? Was there a pivotal moment way back in the beginning that made you want to become an attorney in the first place? What was it that drew you to law?
So, so my mom was the first one to suggest it. I never even
Okay.
thought about it. I was in high school and like my classmates were starting to think about what they wanted to do when they grew up, like seriously, as opposed to like, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a firefighter, like seriously
Right.
what you want to do, you know? Um, and I was like, I don't know. But I was talking to my mom, and I grew up in a very strict household. And so most of the time when I wanted to do things, the answer was no. But what I would do is I would usually pretty much now that I think about it, I was drafting briefs to my mom at a young age, drafting arguments. I would send her letters. Keep in mind we're living in the same home, right? But you know, it's one of those situations where don't talk back. I was like, okay, well I won't talk back, but I'll write back, okay?
Love it. Okay.
So I would write her letters of like these arguments, like I should be able to hang out with my friends because this, and that. And I would be super convincing. And so before my mom started her hair salon, she worked as like a legal secretary for lawyers, like black lawyers in Houston. And so I think she must have seen something in me, my fire, my passion, my ability to articulate arguments that were actually convincing. She said, "You know what?
Yeah.
You should take all this energy
Yeah.
and instead of trying to go out with your friends, go to law school and become a lawyer and use this for some actual good for people." And so that's what started it. And when she said it, it just made so much sense.
Nice.
And I think also for me, and I've always been someone that has always wanted to just help other people, like just in any way that I can with what I have, whatever I have, whether it's my knowledge, my access to something, my skills, my talents, whatever it is. I'm always looking for a way to use that to help someone else. And it just made so much sense.
I love it. So I want to segue a little bit and just talk because this show is called Life by Design. It's not just about what you do for a living, but also how you live your life each day. So, how do you start your day each morning? What does it look like to be in the world of Ashley Cloud as a human?
One thing that I have become very adamant about is how I start my mornings. Every morning, I start with prayer. I start with prayer, and the way that I see, or not even the way that I see, someone I saw a quote that said, "Prayer is talking to God, and meditation is listening to God."
Yes. I
And
think
so
that same quote.
you saw the same quote? I love it, right?
It's
So
true.
I really do take that to heart because sometimes I feel like people, there have been times when I'm praying and I'm like, I'm not hearing from God, but I'm not making space for it because I'm talking the whole time, right? And so I go into prayer and I say, God, you know, guide my day and you know whatever the case may be. Um, and then I go into meditation. And I don't go into meditation for too long, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, but it really helps me center my day. It helps ground me. Sometimes I do wake up kind of like, oh my God, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. There's so many things I have to do. And it's like, calm down, chill, relax, you know? So I have like a little altar that I sit at and I will meditate and I do some breath work there, and then I will get my day started. One thing that I've been doing is getting out of the house more because when I moved here 3 years ago, I didn't really know anyone, and it was like it is outside right now, cold, and it was still COVID, and so I started my business by myself. I wasn't seeing anyone. I wasn't meeting anyone. And so it has been a journey to socialize, to build my network, which I've been able to do. And so in order to keep that going, I will try to get out of the house sometimes. And sometimes I'll work in a coffee shop or at a co-working space like I am now, just to be in the midst of other people and really other entrepreneurs, which is really awesome to just feed off of their energy. And you know, we're all going after our different dreams and things of that nature. A lot of times I'm going to some kind of networking event where I am meeting like-minded people and just socializing, and then I end my day, have dinner, and go to bed.
But in the middle of that day, you're working with those clients, right? So tell us a bit about the clients that you serve. Are they primarily fashion designers or in some other area of the industry?
So as of now, I have clients that are in all different types of industries. I do have fashion clients for sure, but I also have clients in tech. I have clients that are in the food industry. I have clients that are in the beauty industry and other types of businesses that are providing different services to people.
So there were a couple of key stories in the news in recent months. What is your take on the Uggs situation?
So a couple weeks ago, the owner of the UGG since 1974 brand, which is based in Australia, put out a notice about the fact that they were going to have to rebrand their name to just since 1974 in the US. And a couple things for me that stood out was one, I had no idea that there was more than one company or brand called UGG. I thought there was just one UGG boot that people wore and that was it.
Mm,
One thing that I think was a huge issue is the fact that the name of the brand actually describes the type of shoe that it sells. And because that, it's almost expected that other people are going to do the same thing. Even if they're not necessarily naming their brand that, if they just refer to the shoe as what it is, they might call it an UGG because that's just what they're called apparently, right? So
okay,
that makes
interesting. So let's put a pin in that really quickly because there was the original company in Australia, and then there was another brand that apparently was selling Uggs in the US. I remember years ago there was a huge uproar on social media about the quality of the Uggs that people were getting. It was not quite what they were expecting. And what I gathered from all of that, I'm not a big Ugg wearer, but what I saw from the people that were talking about it is that the original Uggs are high quality, handmade pieces of art almost. And the ones that were being sold in the US, en masse, were pretty crappy, kind of falling apart after a few uses. And you know why that's interesting to me is because the original one had a level of integrity when they were putting this out, although they did use a name that is indicative of what it is. Okay, an UGG is an actual boot. I feel for them because they really had a vision for this brand and were trying to serve the customers at a higher level. And now comes in this other company and undercuts everything that they're doing and basically just takes a name. So can you tell us, how did that happen? How is that even possible that somebody could start something so meaningful and have the rug swept out from under them by somebody who just comes in and does some paperwork?
Yeah. So unfortunately, there is no right to a name in the world,
Mm,
right? So that's the issue.
yeah.
So in Australia, every single country, they have their own rules, they have their own laws. They also have their own interest in collecting those like fees for registering the trademarks and so on and so forth, right? So they don't necessarily have any incentive to just say, "Oh, well, you're registered here, so that means you're also registered there." There's a certain level of reciprocity that's available, but you have to actually go after it and get it. And so my understanding with the original UGG brand is that they were the original, but in Australia,
Yeah.
not in the US. Yeah. And so that's where the US version of Uggs was able to kind of swoop in, take advantage.
Mhm.
And what they did was they basically bought out the original owner and user of the word Ugg brand in the US. So basically they get to take on and replace them and their use and their ownership of that trademark in the US.
Okay, so now there were three different companies Well, two originally that had the UGG name, one in Australia, one in the US. And then another bigger company came in and bought out the rights to the one in the US.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Ooh,
Yep. Yep. And it's all and so, as an attorney, but also as a human, I see both sides, right?
yeah.
I see the side of this isn't fair.
All right.
It's just not fair.
Feels that way. If
But
there,
then there's the other side of they had a strategy. They
it's a
have the
business.
money. It's
Yeah.
business,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And of course, I mean, who knows? Maybe now what the UGG in Australia brand could have done was as soon as they started using their brand in Australia and they said, "Ooh, this is kind of popping off. Let me go and apply in other
Yeah.
countries,"
Yeah.
right? But sometimes you just don't know that. You don't know if it's going to pop off. And then that can be very expensive for a new brand to go and get registration in all these different countries, find a lawyer in that country to file your application and so on and so forth. There are a lot of different ways that each country makes it a little bit difficult for for other companies to come into their country and start selling things. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not, but there's always an interest of that country to make sure that they prioritize their citizens, but they'll allow you to come in, but there's going to be some red tape involved.
Right. So with that said, when is it, just to make it clear for the designers, when is it worth it for them to go ahead and trademark their brand name in other countries?
That's hard to say. I mean, I'm going to give you the lawyer answer and everyone hates it, but it just depends. It always depends. I mean, I tell designers start with your country first, okay? Start
Right.
with your country
Start
first,
there, at
right?
least.
Start there. And you know what? I just want to make sure that I make a point about what you said about the difference in quality of the
Mm,
Uggs, right? That is the main purpose of trademarks
yeah.
and trademark registration. You do not want someone else with your name bringing down your brand because consumers are confused. They're now thinking that original brand, they're like, "Oh wow, their quality has gone down." Their quality has not changed, but there's someone else in the marketplace with a similar name and now people are confused and now they
Oh,
think one brand is another brand. This is the power and the main number one purpose of trademark registration is so that when this happens, you can stop people. And the crazy thing is, it's kind of working in the reverse here, where because the UGG brand in the US has the registration in the US, they're stopping the better quality
yeah.
version from coming in and being able to market under that name because they don't want to create confusion.
Can I
And
tell
so,
you exactly what you're talking about actually happened to me like 20, almost 20 years ago. I had an intern for my namesake brand that came in and was excited and, learned all the ins and outs of the company and then went ahead and started a business with my business name. Yes, and it wasn't anything that I would ever put my name behind. So of course we had to send her a cease and desist. And it took a while, but we got her to dismantle everything. And
yeah,
I almost didn't even catch it. So if I had not been aware, she could have built a brand with my name and then just muddied our reputation because of what she was putting out there.
yep,
So
yep,
even if you have everything in order, it could happen. But
yeah.
yeah.
It doesn't stop it, but it does it empowers you. It's a tool that you can use, right? So, like, one thing when you have a trademark registration, especially if you're creating apparel or any type of like tangible thing, if if anyone tries to import goods into the US and they infringe on your trademark, basically they're copying your trademark. If you have a trademark registration, you can also register with the US Customs and Border Patrol, and they will literally stop the things from coming into the
Mm,
US. So
yes.
that's one thing.
Mhm.
And you can also use your trademark registration for website takedowns, for social media takedowns, and all kinds of other things. But
Yeah.
without that, they're like, is your word against theirs. We don't believe, you don't have anything to back up what you're saying until you have that registration that has that stamp from the federal government that says, like, yeah, this is theirs. And if you want to say that it's not, you got to fight them and take it from them.
Yes, yes. So I know that many emerging brands wait a while before they actually trademark a name. And I don't recommend that they trademark it as soon as they think of it. Of course, they've got to test the concept, prove the concept, and make sure that this is a name that they're going to want attached to their brand for the long term. So, what do you have to say about that? Why is it that some, even after that testing period, just never take that next step and trademark their business? What have you found to be true?
A couple things. One, emerging brands have emerging budgets, right? So,
Mm, okay.
and,
Okay. Okay. That's
and
real.
that's, I mean, and it just is what it is, right? And so a lot of times it's like, am I going to buy fabric so that I can make garments and sell them, or am I going to get a trademark registration? And sometimes the answer is, I'm going to buy the fabric. It is, and that happens a lot of times. But the other side of that is the devastation that people experience when someone does copy them because they weren't expecting it. And I'm not gonna lie, a lot of times, especially in my line of work, until something goes wrong, it gets ignored and things get, pushed down the endless to-do list of being any type of dreamer and making something from nothing, right? It gets pushed down. But the second that someone's using my name, now there's this rush of trying to get everything fixed. And sometimes it makes it much more difficult when someone else starts using your name if you don't have that registration, especially because maybe they have more of a budget and can go and apply for the registration before you. And there are ways to work around this, but they're expensive. They just are. And so as much as it might seem like a huge expense, which it really is an investment in your brand to register your trademark, it's almost always cheaper and less
Mm,
expensive to do it the right way first, like you said,
on the front
versus
end.
and
Yeah.
be more proactive about it than having to be reactive. Now you've got to pay a lawyer to send out a cease and desist. Now you might have to file a lawsuit. And you still have to file that trademark registration so that you can say, I own this. Otherwise, it's like I said, it's you versus them.
Yeah.
And and of course I experience this a lot where they're like, I'm just gonna sue. Lawsuits are so expensive
Yeah.
and they take so long. I had my first trial last year. The trial went on for like 3 months,
Oh my gosh.
and
That's full-time business.
it took about 6 more months before we actually got word from the judge. I think when the trial was over, I think I was talking to like friends. They're like, "So what happened?" And I'm like, "I don't know yet. I gotta wait for the judge to decide."
Wow.
You're talking about a year, and that's just the trial. There's usually months and possibly years before that where you're trying to negotiate, you're arguing, you're trying to work it out, you're spending all this money on attorneys, and you're doing depositions and you're doing all this stuff just to end up in a trial that's going to cost you 50, 60, 70, $100,000, and then you might lose. But all of that can be avoided. Not, I don't want to say all of it because sometimes you still got to go to court. You still got to go to court sometimes, but at least you have that agreement from the government, basically, that acquiescence, that approval that says they own it.
Yes. One more case I want to touch upon very briefly is the Workin versus Birkin situation. It sounds very similar to the Uggs case. What is your take on that one?
So I guess let's just step back and explain. So there's the infamous Birkin bag by Hermes. For the most part, when you see one, you know one. You know it's up, that's the Birkin bag when you see it.
Yeah.
Birkin bags don't say Birkin on them anywhere, but you know it, right? And I'm saying that for a reason. So let's put that to the side. Walmart, one of its suppliers, one of its manufacturers, I'm not exactly sure of the relationship, but they allowed someone on their platform to sell a bag that looks very similar to a Birkin bag. Birkin bags go for like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, 30. It just goes up to, I don't even, astronomical prices. This Walmart version, or the working bag as they're calling it, I think was maybe $80. So the working bag, even though people are calling it a working bag, I don't believe that the suppliers or anyone was actually calling it a working bag. And I'm saying that because it's not an issue of them using their trademark, their name Birkin, right? It's not about that in this particular case, from my
Mm-hmm.
understanding.
Mm-hmm.
What this case was about is the way the bag looks, the aesthetic of the bag. Now, unfortunately, this is not something that is really available for clothing,
Right.
but bags are different in that they can have trade dress registration, which is a form of like a trademark. It's in the same realm.
Is that like a
Where
utilitarian type of patent? I know we're not going to go too deep into patents, but trade dress like patenting your design? Because a lot of designers always want to know, can I patent this design? I just came up with it. I don't want anybody to copy it.
in a way, I don't want to confuse them. With trade dress,
Uh-huh.
what we're talking about is you cannot have this design because it's attached to this brand. So when we're talking about trademarks, we're talking about brand. So that can be Birkin, the name Birkin,
Okay. Yes.
right? Hermes, that's a brand name. That's
Mhm.
something that can be trademark protected. It's not something that just the name itself, it can't be copywritten, it can't be patented, the name, right? Because when you hear Birkin, you think of one company, you think of one brand. When you hear Hermes, you think of one company, you think of one brand, right? They want to protect that name because just the word Birkin is worth thousands of dollars. People will pay thousands of dollars just
Yeah.
because something is a Birkin, right? That's the power of trademark registration,
Yes.
especially in fashion.
Yeah.
And I don't know of a lot of industries where trademarks are as powerful as they are in fashion. Because even though I'm sure the quality of the Birkin bag is much better than a working bag, when you're just looking at it, you don't know that. You might not know that. Like maybe if someone's just like walking by. Of course, if you like really look at it deeper, you'll say, "Oh, this is not a Birkin," right? But that's the power of a brand because it's an actual Birkin. People like, "Oh, here's right."
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Mm-hmm.
power in the fashion industry of protecting your brand. And we all know that manufacturers work with multiple brands and they are literally selling the same exact item to multiple brands. And these brands can sell at different price points because of the brand. Okay, so anyways, let's back to trade dress, right?
Yes. Trade dress.
Hermes has ownership of the trade dress of the Birkin bag, which means the way that the bag is designed is protected with trade dress, meaning that Birkin is the only brand that is supposed to be able to create bags that look like a Birkin bag. They actually have the trade dress registration. It's much more complicated than a regular trademark application, but you submit a drawing of the bag. And if you can show that this is a unique bag that only you have and that it's tied directly to your brand, and everyone basically knows that. Sometimes you can even submit different information like things that speak to consumers and like doing consumer surveys. Like when you see this bag, who do you think of? Oh,
Right.
it's Birkin. Okay, yep. Obviously, this is actually a real viable trade dress, right? So that's what happened with the working versus the Birkin bag is that in that instance the working bag is a copy or a replica or a knockoff or really almost a counterfeit, which when you
Yeah.
say counterfeit, that's different, right?
Ooh.
Counterfeit is different from a knockoff, okay? So when you start talking about counterfeit, you're talking about criminal activity, okay? So the difference between, because I saw people saying, oh, it's just a knockoff. There's always knockoffs. It's a difference between a knockoff and a counterfeit. The main difference is you are trying to trick people into believing that this came from another brand, right? So when you go on Canal Street and you see the sunglasses that look like Christian Dior, but they say Christina Dior, or there's Chanel, but they say Channel or whatever. That's counterfeit because you're selling something that you're trying to trick people into thinking that it came from somewhere else, as opposed to it's just strictly the design of the thing. But again, the difference with the Birkin is that their design itself is the thing that lets you know where it came from. It doesn't say Birkin going across the Birkin bag,
Right.
right? So that's the strategy behind having that trade dress. And that's kind of like the difference between the issue with the UGG, where it was really there's this UGG and there's that UGG. They're the same shoe, they're called the same thing. Whereas with the Workin and the Birkin bag, it's the design of that bag that is confusing consumers, or I don't know, no one was really confused. I mean, I'm sure no one thought that a $70, $80 bag was really a Birkin, but some people just don't care about that, and that's another conversation about, whether it's like, oh, is this okay? If it's available to consumers, there's consumers are going to consume.
It's a,
Okay, that's what
yeah,
they do, right?
it's a different level of market, but that Working catered to a whole separate mass of people that maybe wanted a Birkin, but we'll never be able to get one.
I'm just like so fired up talking about this. I'm like, like this just talking about these issues just really gets me fired up, because this is the kind of information that I want to share with
Yeah.
people so that they know about these different strategies that you can use, because in fashion it can be so complicated to protect your creativity and what you're building. And so I'm really passionate about protecting what you can protect,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Sure.
And so and I think some of this are just things that people just don't know about. And
I mean,
yeah.
whoever heard of trade dress? I mean, now that's a term that somebody would be able to call you and ask about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and the beauty of it is you don't have to call me and ask me about it. If you just get on the phone with me, I will find the different things that we need to take care of. That's my job, is to have a conversation with you. We talk about what's going on in your business, your vision, where you are right now, where you're trying to go, and how I can help you get there. And I can't tell you how many times someone will come to me for one thing and I'm saying, well, did you do this? Do you have this in place? You might want to think about this. We can start with this, but you might want to think about this in the next few months. And we can, as depending on what is available to you, your resource and all that stuff, we can take care of it in a few weeks, or a few months, or over the course of some years, depending on what it is and the priority and the risks involved with the delay and all that kind of stuff. That's really what I do, and that's doing this work. Like the way that I feel right now, it just lets me know that I know that I'm like in my purpose, because I
Yes.
love this stuff. I love it. I love it.
So, but for a designer who wants to now, after she's heard this conversation or he's heard this conversation, and decide that it's time to get their trademark done, how long does it take typically from start to finish for them to have it in their hands?
For them to have it in their hands right now, it's taking about 14 months.
Okay. And is that typical?
It is typical for the last, basically since COVID. The
Yeah.
time that it's taken is going up because there are a lot more people filing applications now. So just in 2024, there were over 700,000 trademark applications filed.
What? In
And right
24? Last,
just in 2024.
oh
And right
my gosh.
Yeah. And right now there are about 1.3 million trademark applications pending right now.
Wow. Well, that explains why my last one took so long.
Exactly. And so what I tell people is, yeah, so what I tell people is get in line early, because it's going to be a wait.
Yeah.
I do my part of doing the comprehensive search, making sure that the name that you've chosen is actually available, preparing your application and all that. That might take about 2 weeks. But then we're waiting for like 6, 7, 8 months before someone even looks at your application.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know that the trademark fees are about to go up if they haven't already. But even so, there are going to be some designers that, or some creatives, because I mean, creatives from different industries listen to this show. They're going to go ahead and try to file their trademark themselves as opposed to going to an attorney. Can you talk a bit about that? A bit about what happens when you try to do that yourself and the risk of going through
Yeah.
motions?
Yeah. So I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it works. Sometimes you get lucky, your name is super unique, you don't have any issues with the trademark office, and it works. But that's the minority. That's the minority. I know there are different levels of it. Some entrepreneurs will file themselves. Some will hire like cheap legal. I don't want to name any names, but you know some of them online that you I
Yeah,
don't even want to say the names.
yeah, we won't go there.
Yeah, we won't go there.
But
What I find is most of the time it does not work. And the main reason why is because you're not a trademark attorney. It's very convoluted.
uh,
Some of it is counterintuitive. Some of it literally it took me a while. When I was still in law school and I was like, I'm really gonna do this. I don't even understand this. I don't understand it. It took me years to really be like, oh, okay, now I understand. Okay. So not only just understanding like trademarks themselves, but the process. You're working with the federal government, okay? They speak a different type of language. I worked for the federal government. I get it. A lot of times they think they're like, oh, we're making this so user friendly. And then it's this long block of text. And I'm like, I don't even know what I just read,
not
right?
user friendly.
Not user friendly at
No.
all, right? And then there are so many requirements that are not very clear when you're applying. And also, you can't change a lot of your application once you apply. You can make some tweaks, but they're not big things that you can change. So if you messed up on something, you probably have to start all over again and do it right the next time.
And do they get their feedback?
Absolutely not. You sure don't.
Problem.
You
Yes.
sure don't. I've had multiple clients that have come to me that have actually hired attorneys, but they weren't trademark attorneys. They were just an attorney
Ooh, whoa.
or yeah, that have had their application just completely messed up. They paid someone and everything, lost their application.
Gosh, that's
They,
terrible.
yeah. And then they come to me and now I fix it and I get it done right the second time now. And then they're good to go. And so now what happens is you've spent money the first time and wasted it. And if you're serious about protecting what you're building, you're going to hire someone to do it right. And now you have to pay them.
As an entrepreneur, it, there are so many things on your plate already. You have your area of expertise, your zone of genius, as they say, that you naturally focus on. And who has the room to become a pseudo trademark attorney? It's so much easier if you're serious about your business to hire the experts to do certain things in certain areas because otherwise you're just going to burn yourself out trying to be everything to every part of your business. It's just not really feasible. And I think a lot of designers, a lot of businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs as a whole give up because they take on too much. This thing is a long game, it's a journey, right? You have to have partners in that journey. That's why I love that you were willing to share all of this meaty information because these are conversations that we're not having often enough, especially in our community, right? We need to have places to go, people to tap into, communities to thrive in where you can level up in the ways that you're wanting to do. Okay, so now I think you've given a lot of good information already. Can we get into something a little lighter?
Sure, yeah.
Before I do that, actually, I would love to for you to let everybody know before we dive into the fun part. How can designers, how can emerging creatives connect with you? once they are finished listening to this?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at I am Ashley Cloud. You can also follow the firm on Instagram at the Cloud Law Firm. I'm also on LinkedIn at Ashley N Cloud Esquire MBA. And of course, you can visit our website, thecloudlawfirm.com.
Okay, and I'm gonna link much of that in the show notes. So let's get into some fun questions I have for you. Okay, have nothing to do with law. All right, but just so that we can just see, first of all, what do you do for fun before we even go into the questions? I know you said you meditate, you go for walks, but what do you love to do for fun?
A lot of things. I love riding my bike. I love
Mm,
yoga. I
okay.
love to travel.
Ooh, okay.
I actually got this hat in London.
Ah, okay. Love
I
it.
love to shop. I love to shop.
You does it right.
I love to thrift. I'm a vintage girly. Oh
Mm,
my gosh, I don't know if you
give me
can
that
really see
vintage.
it, but my coat is vintage. I just got this last week. Oh my gosh, so much fun.
I found the most
Um,
amazing vintage leather gloves that I have
ooh,
seen anywhere. They're phenomenal. So hello. I'm because of that, I'm gonna get back into a bit of vintage exploration.
yes. There's nothing like it. There's nothing, and you just said it, like you've never seen them before. That's why I
Wow.
love. Oh my gosh. What else do I love? I love to eat. I love to dance. I do karaoke in my living room sometimes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. I just love to have fun. I love what I do for work, but I tie it all in together because obviously I work with fashion clients
Sure.
and I love fashion on its own. I'm also a content creator, so I do a lot of things.
I love it. Okay, I'm gonna ask you some questions.
Okay.
You're gonna say which one you prefer. Some of them are simple, but others are more adventurous. Okay, ready?
Okay. All right, I'm ready.
Okay, would you go roller skating or ice skating?
Roller skating.
Okay, skydiving or zip lining?
I've done them both. I think I would go skydiving again before I would go ziplining.
Nice. Okay. On one of those vacations, would you rather have a bungalow by the beach or stay at a lakeside resort?
Definitely bungalow by the beach.
Ooh, okay. A stroll in the park or run a 10K?
A stroll in the park any day. I hate running.
Mm. I used to do 5Ks. I still prefer a nice walk to a 5K. I get it. Okay, a penthouse in New York City or a brownstone in Brooklyn?
Ooh, oh, Brownstone and Brooklyn. Brownstone and Brooklyn. Brownstone.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
hear you. Okay, scuba diving in the Caribbean or a Virgin Galactic flight to space with Richard Branson?
Oh, so the scuba diving is hard because I can't swim that well.
Are you going either all the way down or are you going all the way up? Which one?
I think I would do space. I think I would do
Mm,
space.
yeah, me too. Okay. 7-day cruise or an intimate dinner party with the Obamas?
Or intimate dinner party with the Obamas any
That
day.
one was too easy, right?
Too easy. That's priceless.
Right. Okay, just two more. A symphony at Carnegie Hall
Mhm.
or an Adele concert in the park?
A symphony.
Mm.
I love to get dressed up, so I'm mostly thinking about that and having like this like fabulous vintage dress.
Oh,
That's mostly what I'm thinking about.
okay, last one. This one is simpler. A trip to the museum or a sip and paint party?
Party
Ooh,
one. Ooh, sip and paint. It's more interactive.
and more
Yeah,
intimate.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you for playing along.
Yes.
Fun. Okay, so is there anything that I did not ask you that you would like to share? Any area you'd like to dive into before we wrap?
Maybe just like the journey of being an entrepreneur and how hard it is
Hmm. Okay.
and how to push through and how to push past it.
So elaborate on that a bit. How do you stay inspired, stay on task, continue to to work towards your bigger vision for your business?
Prayer and meditation. And taking time to celebrate every
Mm,
win, whether small or
mhm.
big,
Yeah.
because this is not easy work.
No.
Not even just like being a lawyer or being an entrepreneur. Anytime you are doing something where you are taking an idea and you're bringing it to life and you're sharing it with others, I see that as like soul work. Like that is
Yeah.
deep, deep work that you're doing to pull it out of yourself
Yeah.
and to see it come to fruition and to push past all the fear and the anxiety and the uncertainty and all the naysayers and the
Yeah.
negativity and the very convincing comfort zone that you can be in instead of going out and pursuing your dreams and doing really hard, beautiful, exhilarating, challenging things. Um, Taking a moment to just reflect on that journey and seeing where you started and where you are now, and thinking about the days when you were like, oh my God, how am I ever going to get this done? And being able to see and really say to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. You've made progress.
You've made progress. You're doing it,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, it's been a very humbling journey, but also very enlightening and very empowering. I'm doing things that I never thought that I could do. I thought that I was as strong as I could be. And there were times and I was like, I don't want to be strong anymore. Like, I just wanted to just, I'm tired. And then, sure, yeah, maybe you whine for a little bit and you cry and you're sad, but then you're like, wait a minute, no one's making me do this.
You do
This
have
is
choices. That's such a good point. You do
yeah.
have choices.
I could choose to do the
Put
easy
it
thing.
down, yeah, but will your future you be satisfied with what your life looks like if you don't do what you're doing right now? That's the question, because I don't think everybody is meant to be, nor should push to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
If it's not pulling you forward, if your future you 5 years from now, 10 years from now is not going to be better off or feeling more fulfilled and like you're living the life you were meant to live after doing all of that, everything you're doing is in service to who you want to be in the future. I love that. I love that. Okay,
Yeah.
I have one final question for you.
Yeah.
Are you ready? So, when you have come to the very end of your days, when you have lived, you have loved, you have shared and done all that your heart hoped that you could, what do you hope to leave behind? What do you hope your legacy will be?
Oof. Okay. So I'm like already getting emotional. I'm a Pisces, so that's what we do. But um, one one is to have broken a lot of generational curses.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
to really live my life based on my own terms
Mm,
and to never allow fear to actually stop me from the things that I want, to have believed that anything is possible and actually prove that to myself and to my family, to my friends, anyone who follows me, anyone who I know, even people that I don't know, strangers,
mhm,
my future children, grandchildren, great grandchildren. One thing that I always say, and I've been saying this the last couple of years, a lot of the stuff that I do, I always think about my grandchildren. And I'm like, I have my journals and I'm thinking about them finding my journals.
whoa, that's deep.
And I want them to be like, wow, my grandma was dope. Like I want them to be like, man, your grandma not as cool as mine. My grandma did this, she did that, she was like this, she was like that, she went here, she was there. Those are the kinds of things that I think about
Mm,
because I want to inspire people to get out of their comfort zones, to know that anything is possible if you
yeah,
believe, and to do the work on yourself that will actually allow you to believe those things. So it's just so important to me that I inspire anyone and everyone around me with my life, because I talk to people and they tell me their fears and their struggles, and I feel for them so much because I know what that's like. And I know my own journey, my own personal like healing journey that I've had to go on to overcome so many things. And I'm still overcoming so many things every day.
Yeah.
Learning, we're always learning and evolving. If we're living right, we're always evolving,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? And so that is something that I want to be able to leave this earth with, people knowing about me. Like Ashley really, she did everything she said she was going to do. And even more than that is because she lived that way, it let me know that I could live that way.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Well, Ashley, thank you for sharing all that you are with our listeners. Thank you for service that you are doing for all of the blossoming entrepreneurs out there that are looking for people like you with the level of legal expertise and the desire to educate and empower and help build a foundation that they can, depend on long term. You're doing a good work, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Life by Design show. We welcome your feedback, so if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, leave a review, or share it with your friends. And if there's someone you think I should consider bringing in for a combo, send me a DM on social. Thank you again, and I'll see you on the other side.